Is it possible to increase your happiness later in life? The answer is yes, but the way of doing it might surprise you. What if I said by incorporating this practice into your life, you could improve your health, reduce hospitalizations, and live longer and be happier? And what if I said you could do this practice at any age and stage, almost anywhere, and you could customize it to your own interests? Do you want to learn more? If so, stay tuned and learn how to bring more happiness into your life. Welcome to Seniority Authority, the podcast where I track down experts to answer your questions on aging. Thanks to our show sponsor, the Riverwoods Group, Northern New England's largest family of nonprofit retirement communities, where active adults find community, purpose, and peace of mind. Visit riverwoodsgroup.org. Now, let's hear from today's guest. Welcome to Seniority Authority. I'm your host, Cathleen Toomey. What if I told you you could be happier, healthier, and live a longer life by incorporating one practice into your life? Would you want to learn more? Would it make you even more interested if I said this had been researched and verified by the Journal of Applied Gerontology, the Journal of Happiness Studies in the UK, and the Mayo Clinic? My guest today has a long experience with this practice and is here to share what he knows about how you can incorporate this into your own life. Richard Peck leads the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation's philanthropy and donor services team. He is a certified financial planner, a chartered advisor in philanthropy, and a chartered financial consultant. Prior to the Charitable Foundation, Rick served Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, the Geisel School of Medicine, and Dartmouth College in their philanthropic work. And I just learned he also does improv comedy. Welcome to Seniority Authority, Rick.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I think I want to do a podcast on improv comedy, but we're going to leave that for another time.
Yeah, happy to do that. There's a lot of fun in improv. And just to be clear, improv comedy is different from stand-up comedy. A lot of people don't know that, but anyway.
Now, I kicked off this episode very intentionally by making some pretty big statements about how to increase your happiness. And in case you didn't figure out already, what we're talking about is volunteering. Multiple research studies have shown that volunteering increases your sense of well-being, and those that volunteer experience better health. The Mayo Clinic cites 6 specific benefits from volunteering, from reducing depression to increasing your social connections to providing purpose and an opportunity to stay physically and mentally active. So Rick has a tremendous amount of experience in volunteering, giving back, and philanthropy. And one of the areas I know that you and I have talked a lot about is talking with people who are contemplating retirement or people who have just ended their careers. What is their usual reaction to the idea of volunteering?
Well, a lot of people are already volunteering when they're working. And I think of it in 2 categories, really. They could be just helping in some way with the organization that means something to them, or they're maybe doing something more substantive, like they're acting as advisors or maybe governing board members. So if you look at somebody's biography, a bio while they're working, usually it'll list 2 or 3 or 4 things that they've been doing. But I'd say that just in the transition to retirement, it just becomes more serious because maybe they'll have more time to do that. And maybe something that we can talk about as we go here is the idea of volunteering in an obligatory way, which is what they might have done when they were working, versus volunteering in a way that says, I really want to do this. This means something to me. It's meant something to me for a long time. I just didn't have the time to do it. I haven't been as intentional of leaning into something that I really want to do. And that could be anything. It could be things that people did when they were kids that they wanted to spend more time doing. Maybe they did it with their grandparents. They did it with their parents, or they've always thought about doing something and they just never got around to doing it, or they never were, again, intentional. So I'd say that it becomes very real by the time they retire. It becomes a point in time where they say, okay, I have much more time than I used to. How do I want to spend it?
Do you find that there are some people who think of volunteering as not valuable, that their sense of self is tied up in how they are compensated for work? And do people sometimes have a hard time shifting that mindset?
I would say people do not have a hard time shifting that mindset. I'd say there are many people who have found great value in their careers. They were paid but then that chapter ends for them and they're okay with that. So then they say, okay, well, now what else can I do? Can I take the same skill set that I had with my job or the many things I did during my life? And can I apply them in a way that, yes, maybe I'm not getting paid for it, but it doesn't mean it's any less valuable. It just means that I am doing it because I want to do it. And maybe they feel like there's a societal need and therefore they want to lean into that. I mean, there is a perception by some maybe that, oh, that's a volunteer, so I don't take their role as seriously, but I think that's the minority. Most people value the volunteers that they see. They applaud the volunteers that they see working in places. And so I'd say that it's just a matter of changing your mindset from now I'm being paid for these things that I do, or I did these as a volunteer, but now I'm doing them because it's where I find great meaning.
How would you advise someone who is having more time in their life for whatever reason, and they want to volunteer, but they're not sure where to turn? They don't know what they should do. And I think some people who have been on a track of, I get up, I go to work, I do the same thing, and then they're presented with life change and more time, and they don't even know where to start. Where would you suggest they start when they think about how to volunteer and have fun and feel purposeful?
I think sometimes they just need to have a conversation with somebody. It's almost like you could take two people, for example, who are retired, and they interview each other. And they would say, now, you have time to do whatever you want. What's meaningful to you? What gives you joy? And the person being interviewed answers, well, I don't know. And I say, well, think about that for a second. What do you read about? What do you watch? What do you think about that might be important to you? And say, well, maybe I thought about working at the soup kitchen, or I admire the work they do in the soup kitchen, or I see there's opportunities to beautify my neighborhood. I'd like to do something that way. Or I feel like my church needs me. I feel like there's been opportunities to help my church. I haven't done that. So you just kind of let them talk it out with no agenda. There's no wrong answers here. It's just talk out what you think is meaningful to you. And eventually you find maybe there's 5 or 6 topics. And it goes from maybe the place at the beginning of the conversation, which was, gee, I have no idea, to, gosh, now I have 5 or 6 different things to choose from. What do I want to zone in on as a start? What is the thing I want to explore as a starting point? So it becomes, I think, just a bit of a personal journey and just figuring out what that means for someone.
And you and I had talked when we were preparing for this interview about some other tools that you could use. The old-fashioned, what was it called, vision board, where you could get magazines out, get articles out, or pictures, and put them on a board to try to help spark some ideas.
Yeah, there's a program that we use. There's a company called 2164, and it is a company that's primarily in the philanthropic space, but there's a deck of cards that they have, some picture cards, and they're called the Picture Your Legacy cards. And we use them to stimulate conversations about philanthropy when I'm at the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. It's a very good tool, but it also transcends that. I think it transcends into much of what we were just talking about. So, for example, how the cards work are, there's about 52 different picture cards. They're probably 4 or 5 times the size of a normal deck. And so the exercise is this. You would have a deck of cards. I would have a deck of cards. Maybe there's other people at the table who have a deck of cards. And what we do is we go through the deck as individuals quietly, and we just pick out 3 or 4 pictures that mean something to us. And then we put the rest of the deck aside, and then we go around the table, and each person talks about why those 3 or 4 cards mean something to them. And after everyone's done having those conversations, which, by the way, can be quite enlightening, especially if a family's doing it, it might be that, gee, Mom, I didn't know that you were interested in that. You've never said that before. And even a husband and wife can learn about different things about each other that they didn't know from the picture card exercise. And people can learn a lot about themselves. It's like, I haven't thought about that in 45 years. So I pulled this card out. I haven't thought about this. But what happens at the end, the whole point of the exercise is to say, okay, you just picked out 3 or 4 cards that you say were important to you for all the reasons you mentioned. Now think about the way you spend your time right now, or you spend your money right now in the form of donations. Think about that. Now, does that match with what you pulled out of the deck? And many times they're not aligned at all. How people are spending their time or their money or their talents is not aligned with what they think is valuable to them as of this moment. So the whole point, the light bulb goes off and people say, well, gee, I guess I need to do something about that. I need to sit down and break it apart. Just go through each of these 3 or 4 cards and say, how do I lean into this? So it's an extremely simple exercise, but it's so enlightening and very powerful. I found it powerful myself when I did it. I thought, yeah, I really need to be doing more of these things. Why am I not doing them? And part of it is because I don't have the time, because I'm busy and I'm working, but it makes me think about the future, makes me think about, okay, so in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, I really should be putting more time and energy into this. This is a good on-ramp to getting there. Or maybe it's some things I can even be doing today.
That sounds like a fabulous exercise. And it sounds like it's great to do it with a group of people.
Absolutely. It's fun to do it with a group of people because it just makes it more of a shared exercise. We're all on our own journeys, but there might be some commonality. There might be some things we can be learning from each other. Yeah, it just makes it more like an opportunity to bond with each other and yet really get to know yourself in a deeper way.
Is this something that the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation does for new donors, or
we do it actually as an exercise with families many times. It'll be mom and dad and the kids, or it can be just a couple. I do think of us using it often when it has to do with families, but it can be done as one individual. It can be done as a group exercise in any setting, honestly. It doesn't have to be. But we do tend to use it to help people focus on what is most important to them, because with a community foundation, the world is your oyster. We don't come to the table saying, you should support XYZ nonprofits. We say, what's important to you, Kathleen? What do you care about? Because we can talk about anything based on what you want to talk about. We can go in whatever direction you like. I can help guide you on that journey. So the 2164 Picture Your Legacy cards are just a good jumping off point to just helping us drill down and figure out what it is that we're a place that you want to start.
It sounds like a great exercise for someone to do. And it also connects to a concept that we had talked about earlier called T-5, which I love. And you talk about T-5 in the framework of someone who is thinking about selling their business. So transaction minus 5 years. But we talked about that as a broader concept for someone who is planning a transition. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure. And I'll start with saying that T-5 is a phrase in a book called Your Next Adventure. And that was written by a team of individuals at a place called the Colony Group, which is a group in Concord, New Hampshire. So they wrote the book because of what they might call the softer side of business succession. People selling their business. What's your next adventure look like? And that's why they call the book Your Next Adventure. But what they use as a central theme in the book is T-5. So it's basically T, like if you said, takeoff or touchdown, or, that point in time where the transaction happens, for example, if it's a sale of a business, T for transaction. And then what you do is you imagine go 5 years prior. And what do those 5 years leading up to the transaction or the deciding point or the event, what does that look like? So in the book, it's about doing all the things you need to do to get ready for a business transaction, which could be the most important financial transaction of one's life. So there's all the things you need to do to get your business ready for sale. But how it translates to what something broader, as you say, is that imagine that you have 5 years until you retire. And you may say, well, that's 5 years from now. I'm not going to worry about anything until I retire, but really try to start visualizing that. So you are retired, you've played golf, you've gone swimming, you've gone on vacation, the things, all the fun things you wanted to do. You've done the honeydew projects around the house that you needed to take care of. So the T-5 exercise, or just that those 5 years leading up to it, you're just really mentally getting yourself in that space. so that when you do retire, you're really hitting the ground running, or at least you're walking, instead of just sitting still in front of the television going, I guess I don't work anymore and I don't know what my purpose in life is anymore. And I'm bothering my wife or my family because I'm sitting around, taking up space. The T-5 is saying, listen, there are 1,000 choices you could make, and you have a third of your life left. How do you want to spend it? So if you start imagining that and planning for it, then you'll get to that point and you'll say, this is really exciting. I can't wait to retire. I can't wait to do all the things I've been planning to do. And it will just be a very different mindset that you have when you get there.
I love that because of the anticipation. So we all know the planning of a vacation and the process of anticipating it is as enjoyable statistically as going on the vacation. So planning for retirement will help you embrace that next phase, as opposed to saying this is something I have to do, or I'm at this age, and you're looking forward, not looking back.
Exactly. And I'll say this other thing too. Sometimes people are more financially successful than they expect to be. So for example, let's just say we use the T-5 and we expect that we're going to retire in 5 years. Well, you might actually end up being retired in 3 years for whatever reason. So all the more reason to start planning, all the more reason to start thinking about it, because that financial independence, that day may come sooner than you think. And so what have you done to plan for that? What have you done to imagine what that might look like? And again, it'll be something people go toward instead of resisting. And maybe one last point regarding the business sale. People may not know this, but there's something else that's talked about in the world of business transactions. They call it the 3 clocks. And the 3 clocks are, the first clock is when you're going to sell your business, you want to make sure that the industry is in a good place. So you sell widgets and you want to make sure the widget industry is doing well so that you have the best price when you sell your business.
If you're getting smarter, help us reach more minds. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends to follow us on social, or subscribe to our newsletter at seniorityauthority.org.
The second clock is your personal widget business, your ABC widget company. Is that in a good place for sale? Great. Check. Checkbox number 1, checkbox number 2. Now, the third is the most complicated. That's, are you personal to sell that business? And believe it or not, some business sales are derailed because the family, the individual, whatever the case may be, they are not mentally ready to sell that business that they've been working on for 40 years. They are not ready to do it. And they sabotage the sale, even though the first and second clock may be totally in place. The third clock's not aligned, and therefore the whole thing goes up in smoke. So anyway, there's just lots of reasons why people need to mentally be ready, whether it's for transactional reasons because they're selling a business, or just simply because they're ready for that next phase of their lives. But it's not something to take lightly. It's a pretty serious issue for some people about purpose and, what will I do now that even though I'm financially successful, I still don't know what I'm going to do day to day. It troubles me and may trouble the family. So
I think we all know people who cling desperately to work for purpose and who refuse to consider other ways of giving back or creating meaning in their life. There are, I think, more examples of people who are not paying attention to that third clock. And one of the things that I found really remarkable when researching this is that the people who volunteer and give back actually experience better health because of their volunteering efforts. Have you found that to be true? Do you see that in folks that you work with who volunteer?
Yeah, there's actually a phrase as it relates to giving. It says, give until it feels good. Because as you say, there are benefits to that. People get great joy in seeing other people prosper or thrive as a result of either the donations they're making or the work that they're doing. They see right in front of them good things happening. And also the camaraderie sometimes amongst volunteers. I think we've all been involved in events or situations where we knew we couldn't do it without each other. It could be things that happened during COVID where we came together to help families or do whatever we do. Or there's just situations where you feel like, I just feel really good about experiencing that just made me feel like I was part of something special. Could be that you were in a play and you put a production on and it was successful and the audience laughed and enjoyed themselves. So there's, that's a form of volunteering. So it's all those types of things where, yes, people feel energized. They get up in the morning, they're excited to go out and do something fun. They have purpose, they experience joy, they give others joy. So yes, you can see that it recharges their batteries. In some ways, they regret not retiring sooner, because they realize there's so many more things that they'd like to be doing. So yeah, it's again, planning well, whether it's financial planning or planning your life out, it's so important. And I'll just say also from a personal experience recently, a friend of mine, he passed away suddenly this past Sunday. He was riding his bike and he died. So again, it's like, you never know what's next, right? No matter how well you take care of yourself, anything can happen. So why not make the most of the time that you have and spend it in the way that's most important to you? And he did that. He did that as an individual. He did spend a lot of his time doing what he wanted to do. But as it relates to people retiring or that next stage of their lives, again, why waste that time? Do something important. Do something that means something to you. Make the most of that, because one never knows what's next.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about that.
Thank you. But he's not the only person. I mean, we've all had loss in our lives, but it's just a good reminder to all of us that we're all fortunate to have good health, to be able to make choices like what we want to do next if we have that ability to do so. So be planful, figure it out, see what's next, look back and have pride in what you did. And that starts with careful planning as much as you can.
And I think one special thing about what you do is to talk to people about their legacy. And that gets into the area of philanthropy. And it's a way of encouraging people to think about a topic very few people talk about, which is what is our mark when we leave this earth? And how do we want to be thought of? Not necessarily by our resume or the titles we've held, but by the impact we've had on other people. How do you start those conversations, and how do you start the conversation with someone who wants to begin a philanthropy program? And I think for a lot of people are intimidated by philanthropy. They think I need $1 million to be a philanthropist. Explain that whole process to us.
Well, I mean, there's different ways to approach it. One of the phrases that I learned early on in my career, actually when I was being interviewed for my first job in the world of development, one of the people who was interviewing me said, I'll ask individuals, what do you want your legacy to be? And you just leave that alone and just let them answer. And a legacy can be different things to different people. Legacy could be a financial legacy. It could be the legacy of what our family did, what our family was known for, what our family is known for. It could be what I as an individual was known for. It could be my career. It could be what I did outside of my career. It could be both. So it's just, it's almost like, what would people say about you at your funeral or beyond your funeral? What are the good things, hopefully, that people would talk about amongst each other? And how would they carry on your legacy in that way? It might be that they always remember that Cathleen did X, Y, Z, and it's inspiring to me. I always remember that about Cathleen, and that type of a thing. So there's a variety of different ways that you can talk about legacy. As it relates to philanthropy, I'm thinking of this one conversation I had with this gentleman who was coming into a great deal of money that he and his family had never had before. And he said, you know what I think about? I think about the Wentworth family on the seacoast of New Hampshire, and that they have a 400-year legacy. He said, I want my family to have that kind of legacy.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty powerful, that he was thinking that far ahead, that 400 years later, people are still talking about his family in a positive way. And then as it relates to philanthropy, another thing I like to think about is, I'm thinking about this one woman I met with who she had $5 million that she was leaving in her estate. And she had 3 different areas that were of interest to her. She wanted to help orphans, she wanted to help animals, and she wanted to help scholarship. Those are her 3 areas. And also, actually, there was another area she wanted to help people who had cancer. So anyway, as we were talking, I just said to her, would you ever consider writing a story or writing down why you chose those particular topics or particular areas of interest to leave your estate? And she said, no one's ever asked me that question before. And she said, I normally would say no to writing my story down. But then I said to her, well, if you think about readership, if you think about people reading your story, you never know what individuals might be inspired by those stories. And they might say exactly what you said, Kathleen. It's, I don't have a lot of money, but if I applied that money in this way, how many lives could I touch? So think about that kind of legacy. So she said, I'm inspired now. I want to go write these stories down. And they were very touching stories. She was an orphan, so she wanted to help orphans. She loved animals, and she had stories about that. But I said, don't underestimate how powerful that can be to the reader. So she's writing those stories, and the publication of them could be, who knows where that'll stop. Just like a teacher teaching students, you never know where those lessons will end. That multiple generations will benefit from whatever the original teacher was teaching. So again, it transcends money. It becomes about impact, multi-generational impact. And again, there's no wrong answer. It's whatever the individual feels that they want to be known for or what they want to be remembered for.
And I like that they can be remembered in many different ways. And I think sharing your story, writing it down, and encouraging others to learn is another good legacy. It's another really important part of who you are and how you're remembered.
Yeah. Could I tell you one story, another legacy story? This is a philanthropy story, but I think it's a great story. It's worth telling. This woman back in 1985, and I remember this, March of 1985, she made a gift of $1,000 to the neurology department at Dartmouth College. It was their medical school. And she never made another donation to medical school, but she was inspired by an article that she had read about, I believe it was cognitive disorder or some sort of could be Alzheimer's, but she was inspired by this one doctor's work. So fast forward almost 30 years, she was a school teacher who had accumulated, she had received an inheritance, and it grew to almost $20 million. And
wow.
When she died, she left $6 million to the medical school at Dartmouth because she was inspired by that story.
Wow.
30 years ago. And another thing about legacy relates to her, which I thought was a really terrific story. She would put ads in the news. She lived very low profile. The only reason you knew she might have a little bit of money is she drove a really nice car. But otherwise, she lived very, very modestly. And one of the things she would do is she'd publish an article or almost like an ad in the newspaper. And the ad essentially said, are you down on your luck? If you are, give me a call or let's meet. So she would meet these people.
Really?
She'd listen to their story. And if she was compelled, she would give them what they were looking for. She would give them something to give them a leg up and to help them. She'd do it very quietly. And she wasn't looking for anything that should truly benefit these individuals. She'd do it in a very low profile way. But I was really inspired by that. I thought, wow, here's a person who's just really out there trying to help humanity and is looking for nothing for herself. She was doing it just because she wanted to help the common individual. Anyway, so that, it shows there's two levels. There's just like her meeting with people individually and then ultimately having quite a significant sum of money and being able to leave that for the good of humanity. She gave $6 million to medical school, but she gave $6 million to another entity, $6 million to another entity, and a little bit to a fourth entity. But anyway, that was just always a very inspiring story for me. When I read that, I was like, that's very touching on so many levels. And inspiring on this in the sense of it all started with a story that she read.
Well, I think that's what's fascinating about the world of development and the world of philanthropy is you don't know what is going to spark someone's imagination and stay with them and have that aha moment where you say, I want to connect or I want to further this work and I want to help someone continue their studies or change their life. And I also enjoy the fact that that story has a significant impact with her major gifts, but also she didn't wait to pass away. She did random acts of generosity and donation through her life. So that's another important piece is don't wait and leave it all to your death. Decide what you can do in small ways right now.
Exactly. That was part of what gave her joy and part of her legacy. Who knows how many countless people she helped in that way. And she didn't do it for the publicity. She did it because it meant something to her. So she was able to find meaning along the way before she was able to pass away and leave such an immense amount of money to 4 different nonprofits.
And I think that's an example of how volunteering or giving back does change your life, because I'm sure that brought her tremendous joy to positively impact someone else's life.
Yes, absolutely. And that's maybe something none of us do enough, is to say, what can give us joy and give others joy? How can we, because maybe we do things that give others joy, but don't give ourselves much joy. Or maybe we do things that give ourselves joy, but aren't necessarily impacting others in a positive way. What would it look like to match the two together? And that's just, again, part of a personal exploration.
And that is a great lead up to one of my last questions, which is I always ask people on these podcasts, what practical advice would you give our listeners that they could go out and do tomorrow, next week, to start being more mindful of their legacy and more open to the possibility of volunteering in their life? So what would you say to everybody who's downloading and listening to this now? How should they take what we were just talking about and apply that to their life?
Well, I'd say the 2164 exercise, the picture your legacy, that's a good thing you could do all by yourself. And
can you order those on your own as an individual?
I think they're $30 for the deck of cards. And for that matter, you could make your own deck of cards if you wanted to, but the 2164 company makes these picture legacy cards. I truly believe it's worth it to buy the $30 deck and have them sent to you, and do it with your family. But practically speaking, I think that's maybe a good exercise just to get your head centered on some things that are important to you. But then, of course, be mindful of your community. Look around you. Just say, are there things in my community that I could do that would be helpful, especially if you're a longstanding member of the community? Or maybe there's things nationwide that concern you, that bother you, that you might be able to explore. As far as very practically speaking, people could go, let's use New Hampshire as an example. There's a group called Volunteer New Hampshire, and people can contact Volunteer New Hampshire after they do a little personal exploration and say, okay, I think I'd like to volunteer in these ways. If they don't know how to go to the entity directly, to the nonprofit directly, maybe they start with Volunteer New Hampshire and they say, can you plug me in? These are the things that mean something to me. Can you help direct me toward some of the areas of interest that I have and some of the entities that might be able to use my skills, use my talents and time. There's also the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits. That's an interesting place. You could go there and explore and just ask open-ended questions and tell me a little bit about what's happening in the world of nonprofits, what's out there that I might not be aware of. Could I do a site visit? Can I go and visit some of these nonprofits and see their work? It's always inspiring to do site visits. Just go, even if it, quite frankly, doesn't even interest you. You'd be surprised how by the end of the tour, you'd say, wow, I learned a lot today. I didn't know they did that. And I never thought I'd consider volunteering for an organization like this, but it's kind of drawn me in. So I'd say just be open-minded and go and talk to organizations like that. There are Volunteer New Hampshire types of organizations in any state. And there's also New Hampshire centers or entities like the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits in a variety of different states. So those are just ways that you can sort of paint with a broader brush. Or, as I said, you could go directly to nonprofits that might be of interest and take a little tour. So at the end, you want to feel like you've tried a lot of ideas out or explored a few themes before you kind of center yourself in. Because one woman who I'm thinking of, she when she retired, she was very excited about donating, very excited about volunteering. And my advice to her was, take it easy, ease into it, because, could be overwhelming to you. And we were laughing about it because she was so excited about it. But I was saying, pace yourself. And, it was done like a little tongue in cheek, and we kind of laughed about it. But the idea was, be deliberate, be intentional. Try this one thing, make sure it works for you. Then if you want to layer something else in, do that. But the worst thing I think you could do is just to dive in and be like, oh, this isn't working. And why is this so dissatisfying to me? So, dip your toe in the water, maybe do a little bit of volunteering, maybe a few hours, see if you like it. Keep your options open. And again, keep it fun. No obligation. Hopefully it's great satisfaction and maybe more than you ever thought it would be. So those are some practical ways to get started in exploring whatever works for you.
Well, I think that's terrific advice, especially coming from somebody who personally is professionally overbooks herself constantly, just starting out and choosing one opportunity to dive into. Sounds like a great idea. And I'd never thought of doing site visits. That's an excellent idea. We will have the link to the 2164 cards, the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits, Volunteer New Hampshire, and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation as links in our show notes if you want to explore further. And I think also if you're interested in building a financial legacy, going to the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and speaking to someone like Rick's team, they have a wealth of information at their fingertips. They've vetted all the nonprofits. They've done all the work to know that your money is going to the cause that you're concerned about. And they're obviously wonderful at shaping legacies and helping to guide you, not tell you what to do. And they've got their finger on the pulse of the state. And as Rick said, if you're listening in other states, there are similar organizations in each state. So we'll put those links in our show notes so you can make it easy to find them. This has been a fantastic conversation, Rick, and I hope from our talk we have people who are deciding to plan ahead, do the T-5, do some research, find out how they can impact their local community, and through that, bring more joy and happiness and meaning into their own lives. I appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I would just say I'm happy to be a resource for people. As you said, you're going to list a lot of links there. Just one addendum, I guess, to the part about community foundations is I'm linked into a lot of community foundations across the country. So if you're not sure where to start in the community foundation world, you can always float your question to me and I can help triage that out accordingly because we're very collegial with each other. And again, it's all about what's the best fit for the individual. So just on that note, happy to be a resource.
Thank you, Rick. And I can speak from personal experience that Rick is a master connector of people. So he's the best. He is absolutely the best. So thank you so much for joining our show. That is our show for today. If you enjoyed it, please visit our website, seniorityauthority.org, and submit questions for what you'd like to hear next. Also, spread the word, like us on Facebook, join our discussion group, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave a rating so other people can find us. Until next time, enjoy the chance to get smarter about growing older. Thanks to our show sponsor, the Riverwoods Group, Northern New England's largest family of nonprofit retirement communities, where active adults find community, purpose, and peace of mind. Visit riverwoodsgroup.org. That's our show for today. Did it spark a question? If so, send us your questions at seniorityauthority.org and we'll track down the answer. Meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, and rate us on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, let's get smarter about growing older.